Thank you. I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. It's number 151 in our UU hymnal. And it was composed by an African American jazz musician, Billy Taylor, back in the 50s. He said he wrote it for his daughter Kim, and that instrumental version was recorded in 1962. And I'm going to play that at the end for our traveling music as we leave. So you will get to hear that instrumental for sure. Then Dick Dallas added lyrics to the song, and it became a staple of the civil rights movement when it came to the attention of many with the recording by Nina Simone in 1967 on her Silk and Soul album. Others recorded as well, but I think you'll agree no one sings it like Nina Simone. Yeah. When I first heard this song and later read through the lyrics, I was deeply moved. Y'all, I connected with it. Not as civil rights marchers did in the 60s, but as a woman who had felt those same kinds of emotions and who had advocated for others who felt those same yearnings. I'm not going to ask you to sing it, but I'm going to invite you to say the words with me and either think of times you may have felt this way, or if you are blessed enough not to have felt this way, put yourself in someone else's shoes. So I had the words on the slide without the repetition of the last line on each verse. And I just invite you, if you will, to say them with me. I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all these chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things I could say. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear for the whole world to hear. I wish I could share all the love in my heart. Remove all the bars that still keep us apart. I wish you could know what it means to be me. Then you'd see and agree everyone should be free. I wish I could give all I'm longing to give. I wish I could live like I'm longing to live. I wish I could do all the things I could do. Though I'm way overdue, I'd be starting anew. I wish I could be like a bird in the sky. How sweet it would be if I found I could fly. I'd soar to the sun and look down at the sea. Then I'd sing 'cause I'd know how it feels to be free. Yes. This is Women's History Month. So though many can connect with these yearnings for freedom, today's focus will be on the struggle of women, the progress made by women, and yes, the challenges as well. We are in a Unitarian Universalist church this morning, so pardon me for lifting up some important Unitarian and Universalist women in the exploration of these yearnings for women. This morning I'm going to share briefly about the struggles and the gifts given to us by three women who were contemporaries. So these are Julia Ward Howe, Clara Barton, and Francis Ellen Watkins Harper. And I'm going to share these in order of birth. Julia Ward Howe was a Unitarian who is best known for writing the lyrics for, at least for the Battle Hymn of Republic. She was encouraged by Unitarian minister James Freeman Clark to write new lyrics for the melody he had heard on the battlefields of the soldiers singing about John Brown's body. She's also known as the one who called for the first celebration of Mother's Day, not as a day to honor mothers, but as a time for mothers to come together to protest their sons being sent across the seas into what she felt were needless wars. But I want to share about the Julia Ward Howe that I see as the yearning feminist, hoping for a better day for herself and other women. Julia was born into a family of prominence in New York. Her mother died when she was just 5 years old, and she came under the very strict constraints of her father. While her brothers went to school, Julia learned at home and became a gifted writer and poet. Her father kept a tight rein on her, for he was very religious and thought women should be raised to be good wives, seen and not heard, etc. He died when Julia was 20, and for a while she retreated even further and became more religious and separated from society. However, Julia did fall in love and married another prominent man, Dr. Howe, a doctor who'd been doing work with deaf children. He admired Julia's money more than he did her poetry and was adamant that she not share her talent. Her husband once wrote these words to her that some might see as loving. Quote, "I give you fair warning, I shall not help you out of the cocoon state at all. You are a sweet, pretty little mortal, and shall not be immortal, if I can help it, this many a long year. I suppose you think you would look very beautiful emerging from the chrysalis state, and I should be proud to see a pair of wings sprouting from your white shoulders. But no such thing, and I advise you not to show even a feather, for I shall unmercifully cut them off to keep you a prisoner in my arms, my own dear earthly wife, who is to go forth with me through this pleasant world." End quote. And though they worked hard to display a happy marriage, Julia's letters and poetry portray a different story. A colleague who studied these letters wrote, "Julia's letters throughout her marriage reveal anger, bitterness, fear, and guilt. She wanted to convince others that she was happy, but she and her husband were caught in a constant cycle of argument, frustration, and misunderstanding. She wrote in one letter that men are foolish who, quote, think a woman's happiness is insured when she becomes tied for life to one of them. God knows one's wedding day may be worse than the day of one's death. One's husband may prove anything but a comfort and support," end quote. Now, they did separate for a year, though this was secret from most. And her husband indicated that he would happily grant her a divorce, but he demanded that his two favorite children remain with him. Julia did not agree to that demand, and they reconciled. Before his death, she did publish a book of her poetry under another name, but it was easy for him and others to figure out that she was the author, and he became furious. Julia once wrote to her sister, "My voice is frozen to silence, my poetry chained by an icy bond of indifference." Sometimes freedom comes with a death. Julia's husband was 18 years older and died in 1876. The following day, Julia wrote in her journal, quote, my new life begins today." And indeed it did. Julia became a prominent poet, author, abolitionist, and suffragette. And she preached regularly at Unitarian and Universalist churches. She traveled widely and shared her message of freedom for all. Now, in preparation for a sermon about her many years ago, I read a novel by Julia Ward Howe that wasn't published until 2004. 2004. It was called The Hermaphrodite. Do not let this old-fashioned terminology prevent you from reading this. As she explored what we would now term the fluidity of gender and sexuality, I was amazed that I was reading this very compassionate and, yes, passionate novel written by a prominent woman from that time period, and kind of understanding why she did not publish it in that time period. Julia Ward Howe yearned to be free and used her freedom to promote freedom for others. She lived to be an old woman, as you can see up here, a liberal and liberating crone. And that old bird, as her brothers called her, is still teaching me. Clara Barton was a Universalist, best known, of course, for being the founder of the American Red Cross. Because of that, many folks think of her as a nurse, but she had no formal nursing training. Barton did learn many nursing skills when she was young as the main caregiver for her brother David, who had sustained a severe head injury after falling off the roof of a family barn. Yet Clara did not go to nursing training as an adult. It seemed that her father employed a phrenologist to examine Clara's skull, and the bumps, I suppose, on her head led the phrenologist to determine that she should be a teacher, though she was painfully shy. She began her teaching career at the age of 18 and founded a school at her brother's mill for the children of the workers at age 24. She established the first free school in Bordentown, New Jersey in 1852, but resigned when she discovered that the school had hired a man at twice her salary, saying she would never work for less than a man. In Washington, D.C., she interviewed for the job of a patent clerk, and she got it, becoming the first woman to have such a job, and she was paid the same salary, $1,400 a year, not bad for back then, as the male clerks. But then a new Secretary of the Interior, who was opposed to women working or at least rising to such high line of work, demoted her to a copyist at a lower salary. When the Civil War broke out, she quit her job so that she could support the Union war effort. She didn't want to do it from behind the scenes, like most women do, and she begged to be sent to the fields. And indeed, she was on those battlefields using her nursing and caring skills throughout the war, earning her the nickname Angel of the Battlefield. All of this work during the war took its toll on Barton's health. So, as people did back then that could afford it, she went to Europe for the cure. But it was not long before she was doing the same kind of nursing work there. And while in Switzerland, she learned of the International Red Cross. After learning all she could from them, she was determined to return to America to begin an affiliated organization. She had a hard time getting it going, but on May 21st, 1881, the American Association of the Red Cross was formed, and Barton was elected president in June of that year. In 1882, the U.S. joined the International Red Cross. Though her health problems continued, she remained with the Red Cross until 1904. During this time, she also became a big supporter of the women's suffrage movement. This excerpt from a letter, her letter to her friend, Frances Gage, was written in 1870. And it reminds me of some of the circular arguments women have continually had to hear regarding their rights. She wrote, "Women should certainly have some voice in the matter of war, either affirmative or negative, and the fact that she has not this should not be made on the ground which is to deprive her of other privileges. She shan't say there shall be no war, and she shan't take part in it when there is one, and because she don't take part in a war, she must not vote, and because she can't vote, she has no voice in government, and because she has no voice in government, she isn't a citizen, and because she isn't a citizen, she has no rights, and because she has no rights, she must submit to wrongs, and because she submits to wrongs, she isn't anybody, and what does she know about war? And because she don't know anything about it, she mustn't say or do anything about it." Yeah, she was a little frustrated though. I hear you, sister, and thank you for your determination. And then we have Francis Ellen Watkins Harper. Francis Ellen Watkins was blessed to be born to free parents in Baltimore in 1825. She held dual membership in the Unitarian churches and African American Episcopal churches in Philadelphia. and believed the struggle for Black Americans and women of all races were connected. Her works were largely forgotten until scholars and Unitarian Universalists resurrected her legacy. Before her marriage, she was active on the lecture circuit, speaking on abolition and on women's suffrage. And some of her writings seem to be of great interest to middle-class white women, while she also wrote protest literature in the Black liberation tradition. She dropped away, though, from the lecture circuit and decreased her writing when she married Fenton Harper in 1860. He was a widower with 3 children, and they had another child together. Now, I did not read all the kinds of negative things about Fenton Harper that I read about G. Ward Howe's husband, but it is interesting that both of these women became more active in their writing and speaking after their husbands died. Fenton Harper died just 4 years after their marriage, and that is when Francis E.W. Harper returned to the lecture circuit. You've heard the phrase, progress sometimes comes in a hearse. Well, it seems that for some women, freedom comes in a hearse. In May 1866, Francis E.W. Harper delivered an address to the National Women's Rights Convention in New York, saying before thousands, "Justice is not fulfilled so long as woman is unequal before the law. We are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity, and society cannot trample on the weakest and feeblest of its members without receiving the curse in its own soul." Harper's works are still being read, of course, and lifted up by feminist scholars and, of course, Unitarian Universalists. Greg saw a big plaque in one of the museums he went into in Washington with her, and was able to explain to someone else who she was because he'd listened to my sermon. Now, my friend, Dr. Leon Spencer, shared with me that he attended with other Black UUs the dedication of a new marker for Harper in 1992. Here is the quote written by Harper that is on it. She said, "I ask no monument proud and high to arrest the gaze of the passers-by. All that my yearning spirit craves is bury me not in the land of slaves." Yes. Dr. Spencer told me there were 2 reasons for them creating and giving a new gravestone. First, the old one was unreadable, as happens with time. And second, they wanted to let folks know that she was a Unitarian. So there it is, right there on the gravestone. Now, here are 2 other quotes from Harper that are inspirational for us at this time and place, I think. One says, "We want more soul, a higher cultivation of all spiritual faculties. We need more unselfishness, earnestness, and integrity. We need men and women whose hearts are the homes of high and lofty enthusiasm and a noble devotion to the cause of emancipation, who are ready and willing to lay time, talent, and money on the altar of universal freedom." And then thankfully she has this one that gives me hope too. "There is light beyond the darkness, joy beyond the present pain. The shadows bear a promise of a brighter coming day." Amen. I am proud that we have women like this in our history. None of them live to see women get the vote, but they continued working for good into their old age. This is an inspiration for me. Just as Nina Simone was able to change the lyrics and say she finally knew what it was like to be free, we need to persevere through these difficult times when freedoms and rights are being trampled. Sometimes we do not know what to do, what choices we should make in the struggle, but that does not mean that we should do nothing. So I want to close with the words from a UU woman, not from a UU woman back in history, but from a current UU woman who is a poet and colleague and who gives me constant encouragement. Her name is the Reverend Lynn Unger, and you can find her poetry online. This is what she says about choices we make. "Every choice will wound someone, heal someone, build a wall, and open a conversation. Things will always happen that you can't foresee, but you have to choose. It's all we have. that little rudder that we employ in the midst of the eddies and rapids, the current that pulls us inexorably toward the sea. The fact that you are swept along by the river is no excuse. Watch where you are going. Lean in toward what you love. When in doubt, tell the truth. May it be so, beloveds. Amen. Ah.